Oh, hey, look, it works. Yay. Hey. Oh, stop.
There is no mental health in InfoSec.
That's kind of true.
Look up and smile.
Hi.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Cool, we good to go? Everybody hear me okay? Because I can hear myself all over the place. It's freaking me out. Cool, well, welcome. Thanks, everybody, for checking out this talk. It's a little bit of a heavy one, so let's not try to cry too much. No, my name is Danny Akacki, at D, aka CK on Twitter. And this is my talk that I wrote actually for Circle City last year. I unfortunately couldn't make it last year because my son got super sick, and I was really bummed that I couldn't write this for you guys, but it got a lot better over the past year, so I hope this resonates with some people. Even if you aren't suffering with any kind of mental health issues at the moment, if you know somebody who is, I wrote this for everybody. My wife has the hardest time with mine because she can't understand it. She's not in my head, so I also wrote this for her. So yeah, let's get started. So normally on this slide, I always put like all the different projects that I do, my Twitter, all that kind of stuff, but that's for technical talks. And I don't want to concentrate on the business end of it right now, stuff that I've done or accomplished. I'm a dad. That's Jackson, by the way. That's my little mini hacker in training, right? He's just the best. He's quite a bit bigger now, but I love that picture. I'm a husband. That's my wife, Jen. When she watches this later, she's going to feel like, is that the most flattering picture you possibly could have found of me? It is, actually. Who am I kidding? She never watches these things. I'm safe. I'm a brother. I have two sisters. I have a mom, a dad, another brother. That's my sister Pam, by the way, and honestly, I included her in this because she's going through her second round of stage 4 chemo treatment, and she's one of my inspirations to just quit my whining sometimes, because sometimes it's legitimate, like I have my depression and my anxiety and things like that, but she's about as tough as they come. So, but I'm just like you. I'm like every single person in here. Are you coming up or not? Oh, I have to point it at the thing, at the USB thing. Oh, that's depressing. I didn't know that. Well, the big emphasis was, I'm literally just like every one of you. I took this picture an hour ago during the opening ceremonies. And that's the most important thing, because you never really know who you're actually talking to with these things, new people you meet, even people that you might have known for years. You don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what kind of struggles they have. We've got a lot of drama every so often in this industry. We have a lot of egos, and I'm referring to Adrian. I'm not even gonna lie. It's mostly all of Iron Geek's fault. That's why I'm depressed, because I have to read his Twitter. No, I love Adrian. By the way, I wanted to open this up. I completely forgot because of all the technical things we were having. Can I get a round of applause for Iron Geek? Like, just at every single con that I've ever been to. The dude just does so much work, and he gets these things up super quick, so I'm really appreciative of that. And maybe, just like some of you, I'm incredibly depressed. It's kind of a little awkward, right? That kind of like really cuts the room. Not right now. I'm actually super happy because I get to see all of you. But in general, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, which I didn't even know was a thing. I thought I was just like sad all of the time. It comes and goes, but when I finally decided to do something about it, or not decide, I was able to do something about it, because that's kind of the big thing here, when you're actually able to get up and do something about it. I wanted to share it with all of you because I decided I couldn't possibly be the only person dealing with this. I couldn't be the only depressed, anxious, addictive personality person out there. So if even a little bit of this resonates with any of you, then I may have done a good thing. But yeah, I am not an expert. I'm not a doctor, right? My goal of this was just to share what somebody who's just like you is going through. I don't have a lot of answers. I certainly don't have an MD. But I am expert on things like poor impulse control, addictive personality, and bad religion, actually. Although I once met the band and I called them all the wrong names, I don't like to talk about it. It's really sensitive. So before we get too heady, that was from Steve last night. We were downstairs having a good time drinking, him and I and Lady Merlin, and I was like, oh, I gotta go back upstairs and finish these slides that are due tomorrow. He's like, you don't need that. So where did all my problems begin? With that goddamn scene. Has everybody seen Neverending Story? Yeah. I needed to start it with at least some funny stuff, so we don't all want to jump off a bridge after I talk about all this. So you'll notice one of the things that have kind of inspired me and gotten me through this is music. I'm a huge music fan, and actually all the songs I'm going to reference in this I'm going to make a playlist, and if you all want it, I'll share it over Spotify and Apple Music. These are the things that these phrases have kind of become little mantras to me that have really guided me through my journey, trying to get better and helping others to get better, or even to recognize that they really have a problem to begin with, because that's honestly one of the most difficult parts to do. So why InfoSec, right? Why did I decide to do it in our industry? Because you start where you live, right? This is not, at no point during this talk do I want anybody to think that I think that we have a higher proportion of depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts or ADHD or whatever. And I have gotten criticism over some of the things that I've started, because one person had said, well, you make it seem like we're all crazy and we have a higher preponderance of this. It's not that at all. But if you want to begin to make a change and to help people, you can't possibly do this for everybody. You start where you live. You start in the community. I love each and every one of you. I love this entire community. It has done so many good things for me professionally and personally for my own mental health. So I start where I live. And it started as, and I also want to be careful to not turn this, if I'm turning this into like Danny's therapy session, by all means start throwing shit at me. It started because I know when I'm about to get really down for a while, right? It's like, I know I'm going to hit a wall. I know what it looks like. I know exactly what's about to happen, but the wall moves, and I never know which way it's going to come towards me. I don't know when it's going to pop up or how fast I'll be going when I hit it. But I don't know how long it's going to take me to get back up. The things that used to work, they stop. They don't really work anymore. So you have to keep finding new ways to handle these things. So one of the things that really got me started in this is actually Chris Sanders. If anybody knows who Chris is, he's done a lot of work in thinking about thinking, metacognition, right? That's kind of the way that I started to approach this. Thinking about why I'm thinking these thoughts and how do I get past that. This is kind of where it started. I didn't even really see it a whole lot. I thought I was okay. I was like, oh, I'm managing this. And I think it was after Derby, 2 years ago, I started getting a lot of messages from people saying, is Danny okay? And just that phrase was like, holy shit, people notice. And I thought I was okay. I was having a good time at Derby. But those three, oh no, did you go away again? That's good. I like that. But no, I wasn't even close to okay. Which is literally how it feels every time I go up and down and up and down. I'm sure a lot. And by the way, I also want this to be interactive. So if anybody has questions as I'm describing things or talking about things, feel free to shoot a hand up. It's not like save questions to the end. We can talk about this with all of us. So no, I wasn't even close to okay. I just like this is going to play for a while. Right? Like it gets worse every time you see it. You're like, oh God, that hurts so much.
Maybe this time you'll do it.
No, maybe, no. So no, I wasn't okay. I was really not okay. Neither is the audio. But I also do a podcast called the Rally Security Podcast. And my partner, Ben Heisey, which we're actually broadcasting here all this week, had just out of nowhere come to me and was like, hey, what do you think about doing a mental health episode? I was like, oh, dude, you read my mind because I am severely screwed up right now. So let's do that. So we figured, okay, well, what are we going to use for the episode? Like, how do we start our massively unscientific brains? How do we start this? Well, let's start by asking some questions. So the idea that would eventually become this talk started with a question between myself and the whole RallySec crew. Who else feels like this? And who's really going to want to talk about it? And one of the other reasons that I wanted to give this talk and to kind of start giving some pointers about what I went through, what my family has gone through because of my screwed up brain, was because a lot of us can't talk about it. A lot of us are in the government sector. A lot of us need clearances. And who wants to go through those clearances saying, oh yeah, I went to a therapist once. Oh, for what? And we are not that evolved yet where we're going to think, oh, he's got depression, he's probably fine. There's still a huge stigma, which is another reason why I wanted to do this talk. So this is just some of the questions that we came up with. One of the most important ones, are you suffering with mental illness or supporting somebody who is? Because we had different sets of questions if you were actively doing this or going through it or supporting somebody that who is. So I put it out on Twitter. I said, hey, I have a bunch of questions. Anybody who wants to answer? I didn't really expect a whole lot. And we got so many, I had to make a website. And that just made me feel so good. By the way, that graphic is newly created by Tess Schrodinger. I love her so much. So we made a website, infosanity.org, just to have somewhere to put the mounds and mounds of responses that we got back from people. And it covered the gamut of ADHD, OCD, depression, anxiety, addiction, and I was getting all these really wonderful stories from people. And initially I'd said, do you want to remain anonymous or not? And a lot of people didn't. A lot of people were super brave and said, no, put my name out there. I want people to know about this. But my better judgment said, let's keep it all anonymous because you never know who's going to use this information later, right? Which is also kind of the other stigma about this of people wanting to come forward and contribute. But I don't want that anymore. If this talk can start one thing, I don't want people to be scared anymore. And people weren't. They came and had all these amazing stories, and they're all up there on infosanity.org, which I just revamped. I always want more. We always need more. So if you have a story that you want to share or you want to contribute or be an admin for our Slack channel, by all means, reach out to me because we know the help we can get. So we got a lot of responses. And it would take hours to go through all of them. But I started doing some more research. One of the greatest Twitter accounts that y'all should follow if you have questions about this is I think it's at OSMI. It's open sourcing mental illness. And they do amazing work. And they put out, they put out a questionnaire about a year or so ago when I was first writing this talk. And some of the more interesting numbers that I wanted to relay to the group is that 27% of people don't know if their employer's insurance covers mental health benefits. Like, I know I stopped trying to find things because it was just impossible to figure out if my insurance covered it. If we had any programs for this. And that's one of those action items that I want any managers in the audience, any C-levels in the audience, or anybody that has influence in their organization. These things need to be clearer. Because the way that at least my depressive, screwed up brain worked is like, that's a hurdle, that's a wall, can't get over it, I'm just going to go suffer and figure this out on my own. That's just how little it takes for people not to get help. 71% say their employer has never even discussed it with them. We talk about all this user training technically. We talk about phishing awareness and social engineering awareness and tailgating and all of these things. And we bemoan the fact that nobody listens to us and that kind of thing. We talk about that user awareness training, but I have yet to see in any company that I've worked for user awareness, an emphasis put on mental health and how they support it and where it comes from. Which, again, my very unmedical doctor research has come, we've got a big problem with that. 40% think, and this is a big one, and this is why I wanted to do this, and this is why I started InfoSec.org. 40% think being identified as someone with a mental disorder would hurt their career. That has reverberations across everything in a person's life. Those pictures I showed you of my sister and my wife and my kid. Luckily, I've been really fortunate. I've worked for some great companies. I've worked for some really great managers who understood that I knew I could go to them if I had an issue. But the more people I talk to, it's really not like that. And I think I know a lot more attention has to be paid to saying it's okay that your brain doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. I mean, we're all hackers, right? So what do? We want to make things work the way they're not intended to work. So if you're hardwired to be depressed, if you're hardwired with anxiety and you're hardwired with all of these things, it's not your fault. That's just the way you were manufactured. Let's hack the shit out of it and let's try to make that brain work in a way otherwise not intended. So some other numbers that they came up with, and this is, oh good, it does show up a little, no, not really. By different kinds of disorders and this survey was across general like technical things like programmers and IT network and all kinds of things, just in technical fields. That first one is bipolar disorder. I really should have looked at that first. Anxiety, 73% of respondents, some kind of mood disorder. And then going all the way down the chain. So that's a lot of responses. That's a big chunk of a technical community. And I like this slide because it really shows that you are absolutely not alone. If any one person is sitting in this room thinking, this is me, I'm screwed, I feel like this every day, it gets worse and it gets better, and then it's just this roller coaster. Jason Street does a really good keynote for Skydog 2015, I think, that is entitled, Why Are You Here? And he likened it to a whirlpool. Because when it starts, it just sucks you down, and you go around and around, and you don't know how long it's going to take you to come back up again. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. Jason does a lot of really great work in this space. So that's the opening of the talk. Those are some of the hard numbers. Those are some of the things that I wanted to discuss when it comes to the industry overall. But there are some very specific things that I think also fall under your mental health. It doesn't have to be a disorder. It doesn't have to be a disease. But it's things that we all deal with that we really need to talk about more. I don't think there can ever be too many talks like this one. Better than mine. Amanda Berlin does an amazing one. It was a keynote at, I forget which B-sides it was for. Yeah, because he recorded it. So B-sides National 2017. So thank you, Adrian. So we can never have enough of these. But there are some themes, right? There are some themes that I think are kind of unified that we should start talking about. Imposter syndrome. You don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to. How many people in here have ever thought, well, I shouldn't be here. I'm not smart. Okay. I still have a little bit of it. So, and it doesn't just affect us. Every industry has this. It actually, this wasn't the original phrase. It was originally called imposter phenomenon. And it was coined like back in the 70s. And it's the concept of high achieving individuals. And we're in a highly technical field. Like, we're all pretty smart, who are marked by the inability to internalize their accomplishments as something, I did this well, and I am smart, and I can do this. And the persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. Somebody's gonna find out, like, I'm definitely the dumbest person in the room. I frankly love being the dumbest person in the room, because that means I'm surrounded by some super smart people who are probably thinking they're too dumb to be in the room. So it's not just you. So how do we deal with it? I've recently had something that kind of knocked me out of mine, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I ran across a great quote by an actress named Viola Davis. She's in The Help, Fences. Most of you nerds will remember her as Waller from Suicide Squad. And she says, when I started out, I compared myself to others. Was I good enough? Was I pretty enough for that role? But it's the imposter syndrome that's injected in any artist out there. And make no mistake, you're all artists. You all create. And with that creative brain comes some weird things that we have to deal with. But it's also kind of good because it keeps you striving for excellence, wanting to do better, wanting to get it right, even if you feel like you'll never quite hit it. It's a little bit of doubt that keeps you in the process, and it keeps you honest. So let's start talking about imposter syndrome in a positive light. It's not completely negative, because it helps keep you sharp. If you can turn that definition on its face and start looking at that imposter syndrome as like, I own that now. It is keeping me sharp. It's these little mental tricks that I think can really help us out. Create. One of my proudest achievements is InfoSec. It's also my son. I had a hand in that. That was kind of cool. Fairly sure I had a hand in it. I believe my wife. Give talks, write blogs, mentor. Ego is good. Ego is good as long as you don't let it get away from you. The analogy that I came up with that really helped me out is things like the fact I'm up on the stage right now. Things that I can see my friends in the audience, who I love very much. And they're amazing people, super smart people, and they believe I can do it. Like, they actually think I can do things. And I respect them enough to say, maybe I should believe in myself, because if I don't, I'm kind of disrespecting them. And again, this doesn't have to resonate with you. This is just how my brain works now. I have all these amazing people around me that actually give a shit what I do. So I should live up to that. And that really, it may sound harsh or whatever, but it worked for me. And it really kind of got me out of that mode of thinking I can't do something or why bother doing this. So that support system is super, super important. And even if you're sitting in the audience and you think, well, I don't have that support system. Like, I don't have any friends, or like nobody's. I will. Let me be that. I'll be that one person for you. If you're that person in the audience thinking, I can't do this because I don't have that support system, I'll do it. Start it with me. Start it with somebody. Because I guarantee you're wrong. I guarantee there's somebody out there that wants to support you. So imposter syndrome, we've covered that. Burnout. This can affect anybody who's never even had a depressive thought or has never really struggled can identify with burnout, especially because of what we all do for a living. Jack Daniel has done a lot of really great work with this. He has a lot of really great talks. We've had him on RallySec before, and it's kind of funny because I asked him, what's one of your solutions to burnout? Like, when you're just feeling so burnt out, so much work, so much technical stuff. He was like, well, when you're really stressed out, you can actually take on more work, which on its face sounds kind of weird. But it needs to be work that's meaningful to you. It needs to be work that you feel that you're personally fulfilling whatever goal that you have. Mine was creating a DEF CON group, DEF CON 610. Mine was being under InfoSec. Mine's just doing whatever, because I can still separate that from the business that I'm in. One of the issues that we really run into is that so many of us identify as hackers. Like, that's who we are. That's what we do. It's a part of how we identify ourselves, but it's also what we get paid for, which can be super difficult to reconcile. How many people work from home? Right? You can never really get away, because whatever room you're in, I know at least in my house, it's still there. Anything that bothered me, that really just frustrated me that day, it's still right upstairs. So that can be a super tricky notion to navigate when you work remotely and your problems still follow you home because they're in your home. I have a whole sub-talk on that about how to deal with working from home. But burnout happens because we identify ourselves as hackers, and this is what we take pride in. And it doesn't just happen. You don't all of a sudden go one day from happy to, oh my God, I'm so burnt out, like I want to jump off a roof. It is gradual. It will sneak up on you. Burnout is a finicky pain in the ass, because it takes days and weeks and months until one day you just don't care. And that sucks. Not caring about what you're doing is just this cascade of suckiness that you really kind of have to keep an eye out for. I try to keep my slides pretty minimal, as y'all can see by now. But I do have a big wall of text coming up, so be prepared. What are the signs of burnout? What do you look for that you might not even know that you have? There is a shit ton of them. Imperial, you commie. There's a lot of them, man. And one by itself, it's okay. 2, 3, 4, 20. They weigh, and they're with you all of the time. Pessimism, isolate, and these will all build on each other. Poor performance. That's the worst, because not only are you depressed, and now you're burned out about the things that you do to feed your families, which then goes into anger, chronic fatigue. One of the most important things here is these will manifest themselves physically. I have seen my numbers at my own doctor go up and down with how stressed I am. I recently started having anxiety attacks. Now, I've talked to a lot of people through InfoSanity. I've gotten a lot of stories. I've gotten a lot of analogies. But I don't think I ever really understood it until I actually had one. And when it came, I thought it was a heart attack. I thought I was dying. I went to the doctor. I was like, holy shit, I'm having a heart attack. And they did EKGs and they did all kinds of things. And I'm like, no. And they go, you had an anxiety attack. You had a panic attack. And I was doing nothing. I was playing with my kid. We were having dinner. And all of a sudden, like, my chest was tight. I couldn't breathe. I was sweating. I was like, oh shit, I'm dead. Like, this is how I go. And that's I'm going to try this. Work. Oh, I almost had it. I was this close. So that manifestation of this burnout is surprising, and it's risky, because that will have long-term effects on your health. This is why we have to take it really seriously. Burnout just doesn't mean that you hate your job. It's much, much deeper than that. So this is kind of a side, but I don't really hear it talked about all that much. So I want to be sure that I hit it, because, again, this comes from my own personal experience, and I can't possibly be the only person who has had to deal with this. And I'm not particularly talking, although a lot of these can apply to coping with the loss of a loved one, of a pet, and they're usually one and the same, hopefully one and the same. But it's coping with the loss of your job. Yeah, we're in a highly technical field, and we're all really smart people, and there's a lot of opportunity, but it still happens. I've been riffed reduced in force is what if nobody's ever heard the term rift before, twice. And the first time was from my dream gig, and that was just, if I can make that a little bit better for anybody, then this talk will have done some good. It's a very real and not often talked about part of this. So I just wanted to cover it a little bit, and maybe you know somebody going through it, or if it ever happens to you, you'll be a little bit better prepared for it than I was. It's one of my favorite quotes. I've never actually seen the film, but anybody watch The West Wing? Oh my God, more of you have to watch The West Wing. They reference this quote because when you fall, the way that you fall matters. Because if you just smack straight into the ground and never get back up again, that doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do you any good. So here's some of my riff tips. Routine is everything. And again, you can think of these as losing your gig, or you can think of these as something a lot more personal to you. But losing a gig is personal, right? Because it's what you love to do. Learn something new every day, right? Even if it's just that, if you just need to learn Python a little bit more, or if you haven't quite grasped networking, or learn woodworking. It doesn't have to be what we do. Just learn something new. By the way, that one, I always want to give a shout out to one of my mentors. Her name is Jen Ayers, and she's at CrowdStrike now. That one really saved me. Learn something new every day. The stages of grief are super real. There's been studies that say, whoever did it made it up, but they're real. Bargaining. Sometimes you go through all of them on the call with HR, and that's fun. Like trying to bargain with HR. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll do it for free. What? No. That's how your brain screws you up. You just offer to do your work for free to somebody who's firing you. And being okay with change. Like, change is super scary, and yet we deal with it every day because our technology changes so quickly every single day. But when stuff happens personally, somehow our brains can't quite figure that out. We're okay with changing technology, but when our personal situation changes, that is a big, that is something really big that we have to deal with. Mostly you didn't make it happen, unless you were actually getting fired because, I don't know, you've punched the CEO's girlfriend. I don't know. But a lot of times, in the nature of our business, in kind of these corporate takeovers, that's how mine happened. I didn't do it. It was somebody with a spreadsheet and a red pen who's never met me. I've never met them. I got no problem with them. They don't have any personal problems with me, except they want the money they were giving me back. So that's fine. But you didn't make it happen. And a lot of people take this stuff really personally. Just is one of the most dangerous words when it comes to mental health. If I just did this, if I just changed this. It's never just that. Going through your interviews, take as many as you can. Even if you think like you're going to get, a better offer somewhere else, get beat up. Steer into the skid. That first time when I got riffed, I took as many interviews as I possibly could, just for the practice, just for the repetition, just to get my licks in, right? Beat the crap out of me so it feels a little less worse the next time around. Don't run. Don't run from this. Don't hide. Look at it and it sounds easier said than done. Except if you want to physically run, then by all means, because that's going to burn off a lot of calories and be awesome. For leadership, don't be a dick about it. This is one of those things that I've been let go gently and very nicely, and I've been let go very unceremoniously, and had my direct manager never even address it. Again, this is the borderline of when Danny turns into a therapy session, but and I've seen it done to other people. You're dealing with somebody who's taken pride in their work. You're dealing with a team member. Don't be a dick about it. I mean, don't answer 2 a.m. phone calls with somebody crying, but, or do. Maybe that's your thing. Write your own list to help somebody else. Whatever you go through, your worldview is not the same as mine. That's why I always tell people to blog and to write and to create and give your opinions, because it's going to be different than mine. I love this. The overall theme of this is that you are not your mental health. You are not your mental illness. It is lying to you. It is telling you you are not worth it. It's telling you you're stupid. It's telling you you're ugly and worthless and weak. It is absolutely lying to you. And I don't know if this is going to work. Nope, not going to work. Anyway, that was a great clip. I should have tested that first. I'll shoot a link out to it before, but it's a little 3-minute clip of, see, always tempt the demo gods when you haven't tried something first. Right? Isn't it though? He's like, oh, you should have really tested that. I thought you said don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Anyway, that was a really great clip about dealing with how your brain lies to you. So I'm getting towards the end a little bit. I'm a little bit early. But figuring it out, it's way easier said than done. Because and this is actually a really great point for people who are supporting somebody or know somebody that's going through a hard time with depression and anxiety. As somebody with those things, reaching out is the last thing I want to do. It is the absolute last thing I want to do for a myriad of reasons, the chief among which is I feel weak when I do it. So if you are supporting somebody, reach out to them. Be almost kind of annoying about it. I do it to my friends too. I do it to my friends who I know are having a hard time. Just ping them, let them know you're around. Even though you tell them that you're around and you're always available to them, we can't process it. Our brain doesn't believe it. Our brain doesn't believe that somebody wants to help us. I actually had in notes, trying to give help, annoy the shit out of them. Do that, because I've had people do it to me, and it helped. Like, because I didn't want to do it. It's not easy. Any wall that you hit or that your friends hit is going to seem insurmountable. I couldn't find my keys. One time, not finding my keys put me into a spiral for like 2 weeks. That's how that stuff works. So the point of this talk is to help you understand that a little bit better. A psychologist versus a psychiatrist. Which one? Medication? Do I need it? These are a lot of the questions that are super confusing to somebody who's trying to get help. And like I said, you absolutely can't do it alone. And it takes time. So I have a couple brain hacks, stuff I stole from my own therapist, and I'm just going to tell you guys. This takes a lot of time. One of my favorite analogies is picking a lock. Any lock pickers in the audience? Cool. It is all about pressure, right? It's about the pressure of that lever as you're trying to get those pins to bind. And what happens if you have too much pressure when you're trying to pick a lock? All of the pins bind at once and you got to start all over again. That is exactly how at least my depression worked and dealing with this. You think, I'm going to change all of these things. I'm going to change 10 things at once. How many of those things actually work? None of them, because you're trying to put too much pressure on yourself. You're trying to do too much at one time. It's all about finding that first pin and keeping enough pressure on that to get the second pin to bind until finally that lock opens. It's like an Nmap scan. I got a whole bunch of tech analogies. Low and slow, right? I mean, you can just do insane mode and then get somewhere, but a low and slow scan is exactly how I think about thinking about what kind of issues I'm trying to deal with and what are the root causes of it. Don't be afraid of meds. I was on them for a while. They are means. There's even within the mental health community, there's a big stigma on meds sometimes. Like, I don't want them to make me feel weird, or I don't want them to make me feel worse. in which they can, but they can also be a huge help. Don't think that meds are a bad thing. I've also had experiences with psychiatrists that just give them out. Like, you think you're going to be sitting there telling your problems and working it out, and they just shove branded boxes at you. That's a huge issue, right? My first psychiatrist I went to, and I don't know if this is the same for a lot of, but I have a feeling that it is, of just shoving medication at you, saying, hey, take one of these and take two of these, but you're not actually working on the real problem. You're not using that as a means to an end. But don't be afraid of them. They can help. You're going to learn these lessons over and over again. You're going to do this 1,000 times. No amount of mantras or inspirational quotes or anything I've told you will ultimately save you, right? But take a little piece here and there. And don't be afraid of the restart, because you're going to have a lot of them. How many technical problems have we ever fixed by saying, did you try shutting it down and turning it back on again? It works for the brain too. That's called sleep. Get more of it. And help will come from the most unlikely of places. I've run into so many people when I've given like a dry run on this talk, or that ended up, oh, like I used to be a therapist, or my cousin's a therapist, and never be afraid to ask for that help. Some people are going to understand, a lot more won't. You will run into people that love the word just. Oh, can't you just be happy? A lot of us make a lot of money. We make really good livings here. I forget what the technical study of it was, but like after 70 grand, like it doesn't matter anymore or whatever. I'm not a scientist, but just because some of your friends make a lot of money doesn't mean that they're not struggling with the same things you are. That your salary absolutely does not matter. Let's see what else I have on this slide. I have way too many notes on these. There's a great quote on the Mr. Rogers website on PBS. I don't know if it's actually from him, but it's one that I found, and it's written for children, but I really think that it will resonate with a lot of us. If we don't let children know it's okay to feel sad and scared, they're going to try to hide those feelings and think something is wrong with them because they feel that way. I think a lot of us feel like that. Something is wrong with me, so I'm just going to hide this. It doesn't help. They don't, and then it goes on, they don't tell the details of what's making us sad or scared, but if we can help them accept their own feelings as natural and normal, it's going to get more manageable for them. It's nature. It's what's happening in your brain. You don't have to think. You're not broken. None of you are broken. One of my favorite things, again, from the West Wing is, and I love this story. There's a guy walking down the street, and he falls into a hole. Can't get out. Doctor walks by, says, hey, buddy, can you help me out? I'm stuck in this hole. I can't get out. Doctor writes him a script, tosses it in the hole, walks away. All right, shit. So next, the priest walks by. Father, can you help me out? I'm stuck in this hole. I can't get out. Father writes a prayer, tosses it down to him, walks away. Sees his buddy Joe come by. Joe, can you help me out? I'm stuck in this hole. Joe jumps down the hole with him. Says, what the hell are you doing? Now we're both stuck down here. And Joe says, yeah, but I've been here before. I know the way out. I love that story. Don't be afraid to reach out to your friends. Damn it. I hate you. That was meant to be a lot more sentimental. Look for the helpers. We have a lot of them here. Jack Daniel, Jason Street, Totenkopf, Lubix, Brian Brake and the BreakSec Security podcast. Give them a listen. They do a lot of work with this too. That's Michelle Fincher, Amanda Berlin, Alex Rogan. I know Alex isn't actually his real name, but I refuse to call him his real name because I'm used to his Twitter handle. We have helpers among us. they're here. I've spoken or had each of these on my podcast at one point or another. And actually, Mubix does a really, really great thing, which I'll cover as soon as my flow gets better here. I call this slide intermission. I don't call it the end, because I don't want it to be the end. If you're having problems or know somebody who is, and you want to do your own talk, if you want to submit content to infosanity.org, or just find me for a beer later and just talk about things, we have to keep the conversation going. It should never be the end of this conversation. This is what I was getting towards. Hacking together. Mubik started this. Go to hackingtogether.org. And he did a super brave thing. He shot his own video of how he thinks that we should approach this. We're literally all hacking together. We're in this together. We're in the same industry together. So let that extend to our personal relationships. Tone down the drama just a little bit, and so separate that signal to noise ratio that we have in this industry. Jason Street's website is ironin.com. He's got a lot of great things up there. And these are just some of the resources and citations. You guys could take a picture of that I used during this. But other than that, that's what I got. I hope you guys learned something from it, and I hope you take it and do something really good with it. Thanks for having me. Do we have any questions? I got like 10 minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments or anything? Because we'll cover that. No? Cool. All right. Everybody go and smile and be happy.